Viewers' discretion is advised. Frankenstein, the name of the egocentric, self-loathing geek of a scientist that most people today would commonly mistake as the name of his creation, the monster or creature. The story Frankenstein is a classic 3-volume novel written by a young woman in the 1800s named Mary Shelley, who struck the written world not only because she was young and talented, but the fact that she was a woman. But I'm not here to give you a history lesson on the book, or about the political turmoil of the author, and how she rewound her own philosophies into her characters. We're here to talk about Guillermo del Toro's modern remake of Frankenstein for Netflix.
Now, the spasmodic movement of the body caused from the electric current, this is not new. It's not new, however...
Del Toro has never been shy about his love for classic horror cinema, and the monsters that creep from the shadows, having some amazing films produced like Hellboy, Pan's Labyrinth, and Crimson Peak. Most importantly, we should look at his Academy Award-winning film, The Shape of Water, which is a romantic retelling of the creature from the Black Lagoon, if you will. It comes as no surprise to me that he would want to take on a story of this nature. Also, Hollywood has its trends, and most recently we are in a Frankenstein-themed era now. The last one was about Elvis. Do you remember all the Elvis movies? Why? He didn't make his own music. I'm sorry, but not sorry. The tale of Victor Frankenstein and his monster is a super simple one. A young man has a dream of a dark angel that tells him he will learn to bring the dead back to life. Begins a feverish trudge through creating a new life form of a multi-celled organism by collecting parts of several different corpses, stitching them together, and miraculously invigorates life. Victor is horrified by what he has created and spends the rest of the story avoiding his mistake until it's too late, and he must hunt down his own creation to its end. Though much of this differs from the book compared to what Hollywood wants to put on screen, in the book, Victor kinda just happens to make things work out and the monster lives, while in the movies, there's the use of electricity, usually in the form of a large thunderstorm. Del Toro's story seems to be based more on the classic 1931 Boris Karloff's Frankenstein, which almost immediately steers away from the book and tells a different, more darker and less romantic view of the story. This version would become the reason why most people know about this tale. But then Del Toro uses the book to help flesh out his characters' wants and needs, while yet not being too accurate at all. Basically, he wanted to tell his own version of the story. The film begins with a prelude that starts just before the climax, when a ship on an expedition to the North Pole has become stuck in the frozen lands when they see a distant bonfire. The sailors explore what this fire is, only to find a sick and dying man who is seriously wounded. They drag back this unknown man to their ship and nurse him back to health long enough to tell his tale before being interrupted by the monster's appearance. Almost everyone who lays eyes on the creature is repulsed by his abhorrent disposition in life, but they are also seized by fear due to his size and superhuman attributes. Naturally, the sailors attempt to kill, or I guess subdue, the wretched devil. This was fun to see. In most interpretations of Frankenstein's monster, he's not really a killing machine, but here Jacob Elordi's monster is frightening. Several soldiers are killed by the monster before they drop him under the ice, believing him to be dead. Victor tells them he's not and he'll come back. What we need to know is that the monster is basically immortal. He is shot, stabbed, dropped in frozen water, sometimes famished, but the creature lives on. His only weakness, as I can tell, is his own desire to be loved and fire. Then the story begins. Oscar Isaac plays adult Victor Frankenstein, who had a tough childhood where his abusive father taught him modern science and anatomy in hopes that he would follow him in his career path as a surgeon. But after Victor's mother's death through child labor, Victor grows up to believe he can change death's outcome, again from a dream of a dark angel. The dark angel dream, of course, is not in the classic 30s film. This might have scared the audience too much back then, but it is in the book and it's present within this movie. This dream is what makes Victor think his purpose in life is to reanimate new life through his own will. He attempts to demonstrate his progress at college, showcasing a piece of awesome animatronics, where Victor plugs in these small cylinders that will produce enough electrical charge for the specimen to become alive. His professors are unhappy with his showboating, and they're actually sickened by his demonstration, that they evoke the name of God and say only he can bring life, not man, and especially not Victor Frankenstein, so they expel him.
Why not study it? Why not quantify it? This is unholy! An abomination!
Without the school and uncompleted research, Victor has nowhere else to go until a man who goes by the name of Henrik Herlander offers a deal to Victor that he will fund all his research. So Victor enlists the help of his younger brother William, who brings along his fiancée Elizabeth. Somewhere we run into a fun little montage about Victor trying to earn the adour of Elizabeth, which, dude, that's your brother's future wife? What the is wrong with you? And Victor slowly collects enough specimens to help build out his completed experiment. If you know the book or you've seen the classic, Elizabeth was always Victor's heartthrob, with key story elements based around here being in Victor's life. Like in the book, she is presented to him when he was a child by his mother, who has taken her into their own, and eventually Victor's wife when the time comes. Elizabeth's only tie is William, that she is acquainted with Victor and has little respect for him. There's even a moment after the creature is born that she finds him chained in the basement of the laboratory and takes pity and shows him kindness. Every other story she is frightened by him and sometimes even killed by him.
Is this me? I'm Elizabeth.
The second half of this story is very much based on volume 2 of the book. This is the part of the story I'd say is less adapted throughout time because it humanizes the monster. After Victor sees what he has created, Victor tries his best to just forget what happened. The monster escapes and lives out in the wilderness for some time. He finds a small cottage far from the nearing villages, where he begins to observe the inhabitants and understand what it is to become human. He learns how to cut down trees and make fire, forage for berries and herbs, and even learns to read and talk. One day, the younger people of the cottage leave behind their elder, a kind blind man who the monster reveals himself to. This is where the blind man shows the monster the basic essentials in order to live a full life. Then the others come back and they are terrified of the creature and run him off. Dude, I can't express it enough. When I got to this part in the book, and then to see it play out in the film, I was ecstatic. This is the real character growth that you will see within this story. In fact, it might be the only, because Victor doesn't grow. He just gets worse, while on the other hand, the monster isn't a monster as we discover through these series of events, but in fact a human who needs to be nurtured like a child. This changes my feelings towards the monster, and I too felt pity for him. I also now see Victor Frankenstein as the real villain of this story. Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein is a very well produced and acted film that will steal your attention and allow you to enter this macabre gothic romance without being too bored or over-explained like most have found out when you might have been forced to read this book in grade school, in which I would say you're too young to enjoy Shelley's flowery writing. This telling of the story is quite enjoyable. I give it a 5 out of 5 stars, and would not be surprised not to see it claim some accolades during the award season. Now, what tickled my fancy about this movie? Well, first of all, I never got forced to read this book, and I found out I was foreign to the contents of this story. I always knew the difference between Victor, the arrogant creator, and the monster, the one who defies God, or one who's born unnaturally. But I sat down this week to understand all that I could about this beloved story. Oscar Isaac does a great job at acting, like usual, but my only grievance is that he's too old to be playing Victor. From my understanding, Victor would have been in his late 20s to early 30s before the end of this story. Furthermore, Shelley wrote this story so long ago, she wouldn't have thought much about the use of electrical currents in the human nervous system. Shelley's vague description of how Victor was able to accomplish the miracle of life was throughout his childhood passion of alchemy. Personally, for when it comes to telling fantastical stories that are not purposed for science fiction, it's okay to use magic. Think about it. No jeweler or blacksmith ever questioned how the One Ring was forged. It's just magic. The monster, or the creature, Jacob Elordi, who I didn't know much about before starring in this film, has done a great job at bringing the character to life. From when he is first born having childish behavior and wanderlusts at the world around him, into being a cold-hearted beast hunting down his creator across the world. Also his prosthetic suit. I would describe this as a combination of alien characters from Dragon Ball and the pale dude at the beginning of Prometheus, the Alien prequel. Also, Elordi is just a natural giant of a man. Okay, this is the end of the review. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you haven't seen this version of the story, go check it out on Netflix. Guillermo del Toro is an outstanding director, and I'm always interested in what his next project is going to be. He tends to bring the supernatural to life in a world so gray and cold, yet the finished product is often pristine in my opinion. To add one last thing, my favorite part was how the monster interpreted himself into the story of Paradise Lost. He takes the events of the book on face value, having no religious context prior, sees himself as either Adam or Satan himself. In Mary Shelley's book, he went as far as describing the contents about a benevolent God warring with his own creations. Now, Shelley must have been radical in her time. Bye.